You are watching Xirtus.
Man, this is the thing, man. It's like when people talk about what the leaders are doing, like that is a legitimate argument. Yeah, I'm more afraid of my neighbors. And like, who is that lady from The Mandalorian or whatever who lost her freaking job over a badly worded meme?
Yeah,
Gina
well,
Guerrero.
Yeah, like we've talked about this before, but it's like if you look at that meme, like, yeah, it says it wasn't the Nazis that did this, it was people's neighbors. No, it was both. Like that could have been worded better. But like who am I afraid of when it comes to totalitarianism? Like on one level, yeah, the government, that's crazy, the military, yeah, totally. Like no denying that. And like who enforces the when we talk about like not having freedom of speech and whatever, it tends to be like, people literally surrounding you. And nowadays on the internet, like it's weird. Like I'm as concerned about regular people as I am about the government when it comes to what they're going to enforce. Like if your boss tells you that you can't do this unless you do this, like he's the one in like paying forward what the government is propagating, right? So and the media. So like in the media too, like that's the crazy thing. So I don't know.
well,
Are you guys free speech absolutionists?
usually, I mean, I grew up in South Park, America. I felt like the most beneficial tool we had towards progress of any kind was South Park because it was so irreverent. I felt like irreverent free speech was the only way that we could actually hear, and it's an extremist point of view because you have the extremist, arrogant to a point of ignorance on the far right and the arrogance to a point of ignorance on the far left, and they're both yelling at each other, and you're showing two idiots representing those sides, not the greatest, not like it's not like a debate between the finest minds, like it's not like Bill Buckley and Noam Chomsky, or maybe it is. I mean, but it's making fun of it, and from there you're able to see, okay, well, here are the problems with both of these things. If we let this go unchecked, it will go, to a comically bad place this way, and if we let that go unchecked, it'll go to a comically bad direction that way. So what did we learn today, children? Right? And that was free speech. And it felt like even then people were complaining, right? The media in Hollywood was like, how could South Park be so irreverent to all of our values, right? But that's what led us to a better future in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. I talked to Mormons yesterday at my house for a couple hours about just that.
Nice.
So they came by. There's the two boys this time, and one of them was Asian, and the other, and he didn't talk as much. He was more listening. He's really attuned, he's paying attention. And the other guy seemed a bit younger. He's like, wow, he's really excitable. So everything I was telling him about, talking about the Upanishads or whatever it was, so, wow. And so, yeah, they came to my house. They looked at my Zohar collection.
You're gonna get him in trouble.
Like, oh man, but we talked about South Park, and they brought it up. So like because of the Book of Mormon, Trey Parker, Matt Stone. Actually, I brought up the Broadway thing, and then they brought up like, oh, South Park did the episode. We at least saw one of them had seen the episode. They
haven't seen the musical. Are Mormons allowed to see me? Yeah, of course they can see musical.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're not necessarily supposed to watch that one, but they can.
They have, and they do. And so you'll have actually rows of Mormons have shown up to go see. They'll buy like multiple seats altogether.
I feel like there's more than 0 Mormons that saw the Book of Mormon and were like, I can just make shit up, and then went out into the field and used it almost like a guide.
Right. So what my friend told me was that when she saw it, I forget exactly where, but it was I saw it in London. But when she saw it before that, she said, there was Mormons there, and she asked them what they thought, and they said, well, we would be upset, but they didn't say anything that wasn't true. And so I had somebody tell me the exact same thing who was from the place where it takes place. So like it was like halfway through though, so I don't know what he thought by the end. But I went out for the cigarette break, and there's a guy who I started talking to, and he said no one told him that it takes place where he's from. Like, so the missionaries, they go out, I think it was like, probably pronounced it wrong, Mozambique or something like that. Like they go to some really poor African place, and
Uganda. They go to Uganda.
Uganda? Okay, well, he was from there.
And Trey Parker actually went to Uganda to film that, apparently. He went, he's like, I need to do a trip to Uganda. He made a trip to Uganda before he wrote that part of the musical.
To know the realities of what it is. He's being factual. So that's what the guy told me. I said, well, are you offended? And he was like, they didn't say anything that wasn't true, so I can't be offended. Like, I'm not able to. Like, I was like, wow. What a trip.
Was any of this based on an actual missionary tale about Star Wars, or was that all completely fictionalized?
Star Wars is actually about Mormons. I think we all knew that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the other way around.
They inverted it, as they do.
Pretty clearly. I mean, okay, well, we got about a
Or a
minute.
sole
Let's
and only party that governed that was none. There was the people they hated, but primarily the Jews. They hated Jews.
let's start over with the Nazi part.
Conducted by an authoritarian Nazi regime that happened to also be genocidal because they hated Jews and they hated minorities and they hated those that they had a list of people they hated, but primarily the Jews. There was no free speech in Nazi Germany. There was none. There was also no opposition in Nazi Germany.
I just want to corroborate this by saying that my dad had an aunt from Germany in World War II who was a swing kid, and the swing kids were illegal. So what they did was they listened to swing music. Well, the swing music records were banned, but then they would often, because they couldn't always be listening to swing, speak in American jive, and they would like learn what are these words, and they would even translate them, and they would try to come up with a way to upset the Hitler's youth around them by like talking in swing jive terms that were clearly from blacks and Jews, you know, that offended them. And because the music was banned, they would wait for bombings and air raids. And when the air raid sirens were on, that's when they would play the music, because they were the military force would be distracted. So they would be trying to play music and listen and dance, swing in places where they were, I mean, and they would get arrested. And so my dad's aunt was arrested at like 17 years old and sent to the Alps, where she had to be a weather balloon girl for like the next 2 years. You know, so like there was no free speech, there was no freedom of expression. Just, you know, it's hard to imagine that we're teaching people this.
Stacey Lee in the comments says Footloose.
Yeah, it was like Nazi Footloose. I want to make the movie Nazi Footloose. Actually, I think you're right. I think that's what it
They were a
was.
sole
No.
and only party that governed that country. So
Wait, sorry, David, you were saying?
No. Is it Joe Biden? He's the villain in Footloose. That's how
Oh
my
my
introduction to him when he wanted to end
Oh,
raves, get rid of
that's
raves.
not an
Yeah.
accurate reflection of history. I also think it's wrong. Again, I go back to the point of his speech. Okay, the point of his speech was basically that there is an erosion in free speech and intolerance for opposing points of view within Europe. And that's of concern, because that is eroding. That's not an erosion of your military capabilities. That's not an erosion of your economic standing. That's an erosion of the actual values that bind us together in this transatlantic union that everybody talks about. And I think allies and friends and partners that have worked together now for 80 years should be able to speak frankly to one another in open forums without being offended, insulted, or upset. And I spoke to foreign ministers from multiple.
Yeah, because that's how you stop war. If you are able to communicate with each other, diplomacy.
Yeah, totally.
If I can say something and you can hear it, if you can say something and I can hear it, that might save us a lot of forcing each other to listen to demands at the end of a violent engagement.
Yeah, I couldn't be a free speech absolutist though, like to speak to what you asked, Thomas, because I feel similarly like that I do about drugs, that whole thing where it's like, I said it before, Eric Andre, you know, because it's a no-brainer. All drugs should be legalized with the exception of salvia. There's always some exception out there, and there's a good reason for it. And you're like, when it comes to threatening someone, that's why I like it that somebody can be sued for libel. Like I was just talking about the Daily Kos. How is that distinct? Well, something's been repeated there. First of all, if you get something published, that's different than you just said it on some social media outlet, or you said it to your friend out loud in the moment. You know what I mean? Like things have to be vetted in a process. So you have to have people who are at least making some effort. There has to be some oversight that there's some degree of fact checking. If something's blatantly false and you repeat it and it's harming somebody else, it's harming their career, it's harming their life. And really,
you sound like YouTube right now. You sound like the notification I get.
Right, but the thing is that YouTube isn't really doing that. It's telling you that it's doing that, but it's not really doing that. That's why I'm saying in court, it's different than YouTube. YouTube is playing the part as though it was like court and jury, and they've got this whole system when really it's just, it doesn't even have to be a person now. It could be the fucking robot saw a combination of words, and it's like, you can't talk about that. Like if you want to, you know, have a dream bleep a Chrome, you know, and you want to just like talk about it in like an intellectual way, and the YouTube censors are going to be like, no, you can't talk about that. That's not what I'm talking. That's not what I'm saying. So you see that there's a huge gulf of distinction.
I don't see a huge difference there though, because if let's say that one of those examples was like Donald Trump literally comes out and says, put, you know, cleaning supplies into yourself in order to, like, what if someone that had an actual following legitimately said that?
That's not what I'm talking about. He didn't get it published. Like, he didn't have like a whole, there's no one else in steps between. Like, if you publish a book, right, you have like all these steps to make sure that what you're saying is empirical data and not,
I don't know if that's true. I don't know. You can self-publish.
That's the reason why, like, if RFK was to be sued by Fauci for libel for his book, The Real Anthony Fauci, like, that they would have to go through and be like, where is the specific example, and can you prove that? Like, the level of scrutiny is much higher than, say, a freaking YouTube video or what somebody just said in the spur of the moment.
I think historically, yes, but in 2025, I see absolutely no difference from RFK firing up a live stream on TikTok and making a claim versus putting a book out, because we could make a claim right now and have it published on Amazon by this afternoon, and if we had a big enough following, it could become a bestseller that would get more traction than a legitimate Penguin Random House book.
And if something was in that book that really directly, like, say, destroyed somebody's life and their livelihood, and it was completely false, there should be some accountability there. I'm not against, like, that's why I say I can't be an absolutist in that way.
But to quote Carrie, like, what is truth?
Well, that's what court is for. Like, see, this is the thing, is that the court is weaponized, right? Like, the courts are weaponized big time, and you have like people get it, making these kind of decisions, and so that's something.
You could have a David Copperfield as your attorney, and you can convince people of truth, in a court, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Like, if you can get the jury to agree that you just made an elephant disappear,
right? But at the same time, I can't go in the other extreme. Like, I can't just be like, this is why I wouldn't consider myself a libertarian by some of the rules of what's considered libertarian now, because I don't want to live in the Wild West.